In 2002, a new action horror film franchise was launched based on my two least favorite fictional premises, a zombie apocalypse and Great Britain. The first movie was entitled 28 Days Later and centers around a new disease found in primates called the rage virus, causing intense aggression and violence in the monkeys. The disease is released from the lab and catches in humans, causing the fictional island of Great Britain to be ground zero for a zombie outbreak. As the title implies, the movie takes place primarily 28 days later after the rage virus started to spread, and the audience follows Jim, who woke up from a coma to find London deserted and destroyed. He finds some fellow survivors, and the group spends the movie trying to be rescued off the island where the virus has been contained. 5 years later, a sequel was created to follow up the success of 28 Days Later, and I want to see if you guys can notice a pattern in the premises in this series. The writers and producers wanted to show a different cast of characters and their survival story, and to show how the virus completely overwhelms the island over time and how the world responds to it. They said this film 28 weeks after the initial outbreak. Can you guess what the title of this movie is? If you guessed 28 Days Later 2, Electric Dagaloo, you would be right. 28 weeks later follows Don and his kids living in a newly occupied, militarized zone of East London, as NATO tries to re-establish control of Great Britain after the zombies on the island died off from starvation. Things were going great until Don found his wife, who he had presumed dead after being attacked by zombies earlier on. She was the first confirmed case of an asymptomatic carrier of the rage virus, but Don didn't care, so he fucking made out with her and went crazy, spreading the disease on the NATO base and reintroducing the virus to England. The rest of the movie is all about how the military tries to contain the virus again with firebombs and nerve gas as Don's kids try to survive but are ultimately infected by their dad. They manage to escape to France, but Don's son was also an asymptomatic carrier and infects mainland Europe. A couple weeks ago, on June 20th, 2025, the third film in the franchise was released. Once again, audience, I'm asking you to try to guess the title of this movie. I'll give you a hint. It's another time jump centered around the number 28. First one was 28 days. Second one was 28 weeks. So the third one would be 28 months? Wrong. 28 years. Recently, I was hanging out with some friends and we decided to go to the movies on a random Tuesday night because of cheaper tickets. We couldn't see The Materialist because my girlfriend wanted to see that with us, but she was busy that night. So my friend suggested that we see 28 Years Later because he had seen the first movie in the franchise and I had seen the second. This was years ago, and I remember the movie just being fine. It was a zombie movie. I thought the plot was a bit dumb, but it was a fine action horror film. I heard that the first one looks very low budget, but it was actually pretty good and kind of has become a cult classic over time. The character wakes up from a coma at the beginning of the movie has become somewhat of a trope because of 28 Days Later. Anyways, we went in expecting a somewhat entertaining action horror film. I had not even seen a trailer for it. I was only vaguely aware that it was a movie in theaters. So I entered the theater expecting to be mildly entertained for a few hours, but I left a changed man. Guys, 28 Years Later might be one of the worst movies of all time. Before I start talking about why, I want to quickly preface it is entirely possible I feel this way because I did not know what to expect. It's entirely probable that everyone in the theater knew exactly what they were getting into and enjoyed it because it was meant to be bad on purpose. So if you did enjoy this film, please let me know why in the comments below because I could not find anything redeemable about this movie. Also, obviously, spoilers are coming, so if you do not want to be spoiled on 28 Years Later, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and then click off. Let's first talk about... I know I've been asking a lot of you, audience member, but I want you to quickly take a guess on what this movie opens on. How did the filmmakers begin this post-apocalyptic horror film? Perhaps they show the pure terror and carnage that the zombies create? Perhaps they introduce the main character of the film? Wrong. Teletubbies. Nah, just kidding. We do see the zombies attack a sheltering family, but we are not introduced to our main character. We meet Jimmy, who is just a child. He runs away from his family and friends to find his priest dad in a church, who actually welcomes the end times. That's a face Jimmy isn't gonna forget anytime soon. Jimmy hides and we cut to 28 years later, which I may be wrong, guys, but I think that might have to do something with the title of this film. Anyway, now is when we are introduced to our main characters, who live on an island on the coast of England, safe from the rage virus. However, residents often have to travel to the mainland to get supplies, but they can only travel when the tide is low. This will be important later. We meet our lovely nuclear family that this movie is about. Dad, Jamie, who is one of the aforementioned scavengers, Mom, Isla, who is bedridden with some unknown disease messing with her brain, and son, Spike, who is a poorly named 12-year-old. After we learn more about the inner workings of the island, Jamie takes Spike to the mainland for a coming-of-age scavenger ritual. After a bit of exploring, they come upon a Slolo, which is basically a morbidly obese zombie who eats worms. Spike struggles to kill it because he's a little bitch, Jamie kills a few others, and then they continue on. They come upon a worn-down house, and they get attacked by a group of actually competent infecteds led by an alpha, a big dick-swinging, hyper-intelligent daddy zombie. They sleep in the attic overnight until the house starts to fall apart, so they make a run to get back to the island, running through knee-high water because the tide isn't that low. They get chased by the alpha, but manage to make it with the help from the guardians of the gate. The village has a party for Spike, who feels he didn't deserve it because he's a little bitch. But in the hubbub of the festivities, he notices his dad slip out with a woman who is not his mom, and connects the dots. Spike runs home to hang out with his mom and Sam, which is my name. He tells Sam that while he was in the attic yesterday, he noticed a massive fire inland, and Sam tells him that it may have been Dr. Kelson, a crazed former doctor who is obsessed with death. Spike forms a plan to cure his mom, whose disease is getting progressively worse, by taking her to the doctor who will magically cure her somehow. He takes her to the mainland the next morning. After running into some zombies, they find rest overnight in a church. While Spike is on watch duty, he falls asleep because bro is not ready for this. A Slolo, who is basically a cat, tries to eat his shoelaces, but gets mad when they don't taste like worms and easily kills Spike, who is still asleep. What's that? It doesn't kill Spike? How? His mom, who is terminally ill and was asleep, somehow got up and beat the Slolo to death, all while Spike stayed asleep? Sure. Anyway, in the morning we meet a group of Marines from Sweden who are quickly wiped out by a group led by an alpha, who likes to rip the heads and spines out of his victims. Luckily for us, Eric survives, and he runs into Spike and Isla, who are held up in a gas station, escaping the same group of zombies. After saving them, he follows the duo on their journey to find Dr. Kelson. Along the way, Isla finds an infected who gives birth, and helps her deliver. Eric is freaked out by women's bodies, and threatens to kill Spike and his mom until the alpha of all alphas attacks and rips his head off. Spike leads his mom away until they somehow conveniently run into Dr. Kelson, who subdues the alpha named Samson, which is also my name. The doc takes him to his lovely cottage, surrounded by monolith structures made out of bones from bodies he's burned, called Memento Mori, which is also my name. Spike and his mom are somehow okay with this grotesque display of human suffering and hang out with the doctor until he diagnoses Isla with terminal cancer. She immediately asks to be euthanized and added to the top of the bone structure, which Spike has to do for some reason. By the way, they still had this baby that the zombie gave birth to earlier, so Spike has to take the baby, who he named Isla, wonder where he got the inspiration for that, back to the island and leave it for his shitty dad. But Spike does not stay. He goes back to the mainland to live and survive for a while. 28 days later, we see Spike get attacked by a group of zombies, until he is saved by a gang of colorful tracksuit-wearing infected killers, inspired by the Teletubbies and led by Jimmy. Remember him from the beginning of the movie? The movie ends with a close-up of the cross Jimmy's dad gave to him at the church before he was eaten. Looking objectively on paper, the plot is fine at best and nonsense at worst, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Even though I've described what happens in the movie, it truly does not do this film justice. As I've said earlier, this movie is one of the worst I've ever seen, and it goes far beyond its plot. Let's talk about... Okay. Before I rip into this film, I want to quickly talk about what I was fine with. The production design was fine, the settings were kind of cool, the big bone structures looked cool, I guess. The casting was fine, but Voldemort was a jump scare, and I didn't like Spike at all. His performance was pretty bad. The music was fine, I think, and I say that because I don't remember what it was, so it couldn't have been that egregious. The baby not being infected upon delivery was kind of interesting. I guess the alpha has sex with the female zombies, but why wouldn't the virus transfer through the umbilical cord? Why are all the zombies naked anyways?
I'm getting ahead of myself again.
Let's talk about... I'm kind of finding it hard to know exactly where to start. I suppose I can talk about what I thought was stupid about the plot. In 28 Weeks Later, the opening is fantastic because it demonstrates the brutality of the zombies and introduces our main character who narrowly escapes a zombie swarm at the beginning of the outbreak. In this movie, we are introduced to some character as his entire family dies at the hands of utterly incompetent zombies. And I say that because a 12-year-old is able to dodge and outrun them. I'm not really sure what the filmmakers were trying to say when they had Jimmy be introduced in the start and then be reintroduced in the end with his gang of cocaine Power Rangers? Is it for us, the audience, to be like, oh, it's the guy from the beginning, and then clap along to a terrible fight sequence? Is it meant to show what Spike will turn into if he stays on the mainland? Is it meant to be nostalgia bait with the Teletubbies? Why the hell would they open this meant to be taken seriously horror film with the Teletubbies? Perhaps it's meant to elicit a childlike feeling to increase the horror effect, like a doll or something, but it completely took me out of the film from the start because it's just so ridiculous.
I'm getting off track.
I think that this Jimmy business is meant to set up a sequel, which is obviously dumb and a somewhat recent phenomenon meant for another video. The introduction of the Swedish NATO squad really brings the fact that this movie is having a constant identity crisis into focus. How is a highly trained squadron of Marines with fully automatic rifles being completely overran by like 5 zombies that a 12-year-old with a bow and arrow was able to outrun 5 minutes ago? When Eric saves Isla and Spike, how do they not die when the gas station was firebombed? Why did the screenwriters write Eric to be a completely unlikable crypto bro who's trying to impress Spike with pictures of his girlfriend? When Eric is about to kill Spike and Isla, why does he conveniently continue to back up under the massive hole in the ceiling that he could be easily grabbed from? This movie also makes me question why NATO didn't just send more coordinated squadrons to the island and clear it bit by bit like they did in the second movie, instead of just dropping 5 idiots randomly on the coast of England with the mission of have fun. You're telling me that no countries in the entirety of NATO are able to wipe out a small island of dumb zombies? We know that the rest of the world is still normal, so military technology has likely progressed, maybe even to include zombie production. It just makes no sense. As you can probably tell, this movie left me with many questions. For instance, how did these zombies survive 28 years on the island when the zombies in 28 weeks later died from starvation? Maybe someone in the comments can answer that one for me. It might have been a detail I missed. Let's talk about the Doctor real quick. When he's introduced as he subdues Samson, why would the main characters not just kill the Alpha? They know he is going to continue chasing them down. Are they stupid? I can grasp that Spike is chill with the Doctor being deranged because he really wants to save his mom, but when he asks Spike to deliver his mom's skull to the top of the tower, why does he just say yes and immediately do it? He takes all of 0 seconds to get over the death of his mom before fulfilling the strange request of this random man they just met. Speaking of Spike's mom, why is Isla cool with immediately being euthanized upon being diagnosed by a random man who had no medical diagnostic equipment and has been out of practice for almost 30 years? She probably had at least months left to live, but as my friend pointed out, she probably felt at peace in the moment and wanted to have her final moments with a clear mind. That being said, this movie is wildly inconsistent with Isla's behavior, especially with her one moment where she somehow detects a zombie about to kill Spike. If she had the ability to show violent rage the whole time, why does she not do it more often when her and Spike are constantly being attacked? How does she instantly recognize when a zombie is going into labor, and why does she help it? She only has a few come to moments. Why is one of them right when she receives her diagnosis? Isla seems very okay with leaving Spike alone with this random man and a baby he now has to take care of at the age of 12, barely saying bye to him. And she doesn't even care to say goodbye to Jamie, her husband that she supposedly still loves. Did she just forget about him? Why is Spike's dad such an asshole? Is he meant to be the villain in the next movie or something? When he takes Spike out on the first scavenger hunt, after Spike gets his first kill, why do they not just turn back when they know the tide is still low? Why is he so upset at the end of the movie when he finds out that Isla is dead even though he clearly doesn't care about her? Okay, that's all the plot and characterization stuff that I can remember, but I'm sure there's more that I forgot. Beyond the plot, the dialogue in this movie was laughably bad, and it makes me wonder if it was intentional. There were so many moments where I remember thinking to myself, when do people actually talk like this? The biggest example I can think of is when Eric, Spike, and Isla are having a picnic after somehow surviving a gas station exploding. Eric starts to brag about what it's like on mainland Europe and shows his hot girlfriend to a 12-year-old who says something to the effect of, "What's wrong with her face?" when Spike sees her picture. Cue audience genuine laughter. This picnic scene kind of plays out like a reality show. I swear I remember Eric looking straight at the camera like Jim from The Office. There's another moment where the group is introducing themselves to Dr. Kelson and Spike says, "That's my mom. I'm Spike. And this is a baby," which is a running joke my friends and I have now. The editing, oh my God, the editing in this film was so awful. On Jamie and Spike's expedition, when they start killing some slow-lows, the movie will do this weird freeze frame headshot kill thing like Fallout, but it's done so poorly it looks like the film is buffering. And better yet, it only happens in one scene and never again for the rest of the movie, even though there are plenty more zombies killed. The constant cuts during a lot of the fight scenes look so cheap and bad. The best example I can think of is when Jamie and Spike are trying to outrun the Alpha, and we cut back and forth between the two of them struggling to run in knee-high water, and the Alpha doing a perfect Tom Cruise run after them. Overall, this movie looked like but not in a cute art house way. The budget was $60 million, and it looks like it was shot on an iPhone 3. The first movie was shot on bad digital cameras on purpose because they wanted to have a distinct style. Maybe the filmmakers were trying to have a similar effect here, but it does not work. Combined with the horrible green screen and night sky CGI, this running through water scene made me audibly laugh out loud in the theater, when it was clearly meant to elicit horror and anxiety. In general, at no point during this movie was I scared because of the terrible film quality, bad power scaling, and just nonsense behavior from all the characters. It all really took me out of it. In general, the tone of this movie was all over the place, which I've kind of been already talking about already. At times it was trying to be a horror, other times it was trying to be a superhero movie, sometimes it was trying to be a comedy. However, this movie is always a coming of age film as Spike quickly grows up on zombie-infected England, but I had a problem with this premise from the start. The first two movies are purely about survival and adulthood, but this one gets rid of the survival aspect because the characters live on an island that is zombie-free, and we follow the perspective of a 12-year-old who is able to outrun these zombies that can take down whole squadrons of Marines. The motivation of helping his mom get better kind of makes sense because he's 12, but why would Spike not just bring the doctor to her? He almost certainly realizes that in her mental state she would be a liability, but no! She has to save Spike's ass while he's asleep with lethal precision, making him the liability. It all just makes no sense. I didn't want to walk out of the theater purely because I wanted to see how this show would end, and I was not disappointed. I already talked about it, I know, but the end fight scene was so tonally and stylistically bad, I was in hysterics the whole time. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about is the zombie dicks. Oh my god. Why was there so much dick and balls on the screen throughout the entire movie? It didn't even have like a body horror effect. It just showed the alpha and his alpha dong. Why not shoot him from the waist up, which would still show his size? It wasn't just him though. All the zombies in this movie were slinging their shit around as they chased our protagonists. Why do none of the zombies have clothes on even though they all used to be normal people? If there was one thing that truly took me out of taking this movie seriously, it was giving the alpha a massive schlong. I'm not really sure how to end this. This movie was terrible. Please do not go watch it if you're expecting a good follow-up to 28 Weeks Later, but do go watch it if you want to see a truly bad movie with your friends. I feel kind of insane making this because I've really only seen positivity online for this movie. It has an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. But guys, I do want to take a moment to say thank you to the sponsor of this video, 28 Years Later. Guys, a new zombie action horror movie has just hit theaters.